Mr. Smoot, am I pushing the wrong button?
Oh, I need to turn that off.
Is it going? Okay, we're ready.
Good evening. It is just a little bit past 7. It's Thursday, January 14th, 2021. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the governing body of the City of Spring Hill. Welcome to everyone here and to those watching online. Our first order of business, as always, will be our invocation. Those of you who wish to do so, please stand and join us in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you again for this opportunity to come together as a people, to come together as a community, to make decisions that we hope honor you, to carry on your business and the people's business consistent with your will. We ask for your guidance. We ask for your unconditional love and support. We ask for your continued blessing of our community and the continued blessing of our country as we work together to understand one another in peaceful ways. We ask for your guidance in this new year, and we appreciate all that you have done for us and the multiple blessings you have bestowed upon us. In the name of your Son, we pray. Amen.
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 Please continue to stand for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Leeton,
Here.
Mr. Owen,
Here.
Mr. Graves, Mr. Eckert,
Here.
Mrs. Hughes.
Here.
Mayor, we have a quorum present.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. The only addition or change would be a request to add an executive session at the end. This would be for non-elected personnel. It would be a 5-minute executive session. There'll be no formal action required as a result of that.
Is this going to be after announcements?
Yes, it'll be after announcements and reports.
Mayor, move to revise the agenda as stated.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, presumably to approve the agenda.
Yes,
That's what I'm
to
seconding.
approve it.
Thank
That's what I
you
meant
very
to
much.
say. Sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 500. This takes us to citizen participation. This is an opportunity for residents to address the council for items not already on the agenda. Anyone wishing to do so, we just ask that you step up to the lectern, state your name and address for the clerk's records, and then you'll have the council's attention. One person has signed up, Mr. Boswell.
I hope you all had a great New Year's and holiday season.
Thank you.
I wanted to come before you today and kind of discuss a few things that were been sitting kind of hard with me lately. Recently trying to get information that should be open to the public. It's like running into a brick wall through the city. It should be more, the city's supposed to be more transparent. I thought we were working towards that transparency. But I'd also like to address you guys, the council, about seeming double standards and selective enforcement of rules. As far as the selective enforcement of rules, I'm aware that around 12 citizens in the city has been under a microscope for code violations, and I am one of those people as well. I was told that the scrutiny was coming from beyond the city managers, so from the council itself, and I would like to ask the council's members themselves, have there been any discussions or talks about the scrutiny of certain properties in the town of Spring Hill?
Evidently not.
Yes, well. Let me,
I'd like to back up, Mr. Boswell, so we don't lose sight of the first item that you
Yes.
mentioned. What information are you trying to get that you're having difficulty obtaining?
it's not necessarily me, it's other people that have complained to me on the Citizens for Spring Hill page.
Okay.
So, well, I've just seen the rhetoric on the Citizens for Spring Hill page. So, I just want to make sure you guys are aware of the transparency issue. And I kind of feel like maybe if there was a little more transparency among the council itself, we can save money as well. Hang on. I wrote my note down here. I believe we need to go through our policies that the city has, one being selective enforcement of codes. And the reasoning behind the selective enforcement of codes, I understand, is because you'd have to have an army of codes enforcement officers to make sure that everybody was up to codes. And I understand that. However, that policy in itself is flawed. The city needs to be the ones setting the prime example of what needs to be done. I am aware that codes are changing every day, seemingly, and many people are frustrated because of the changes. You know, a lot of people don't like change. I get it, and I understand that we, in order to move forward, we have to invite change to an extent. The problem is the city selectively enforces those codes on a few while allowing blatant code violations to go just because even though they are specifically mentioned in the codes as being a violation, such as using automotive parts as artwork, and that would include anything from wagon wheels to almost anything's considered an automotive part under your terms of parts. If you look in your, I guess it's in the refuse section. Anyway, the consensus is that automotive parts is art. It's no longer really a bad thing. Kind of makes a charm and uniqueness in a town. Which brings up brings up another point, is that we need to seriously consider taking a look at our codes and revising them, making them clear, and making sure that the city is not setting the precedent of selective enforcement. I believe it was Tucker Carlson that said that, and it's very fitting in this situation. Selective enforcement is not a law; it is the whim of a tyrant. In order for law to be law, it needs to be applied equally to every citizen. Those words are harsh, but they ring true. Selective enforcement is not an acceptable code in the city of Spring Hill. City needs to set a clear standard as to what they expect out of their citizens by being the example.
Is there a particular, so the city has the codes online,
Yes.
and, do you mind if I?
No, please.
Well, I think you're gonna ask what I was gonna ask, but go ahead and,
I feel that maybe I would love to help you with your complaint. I want to be able to address some satisfaction towards it, but I think I need more detail.
Details as far as,
Well, the city itself has 12 chapters
uh-huh,
of code in our city codes book. And most of those are not meant towards the citizens in general, like.
Property related.
Property related, you know, there's beverages.
well,
Are you talking about building codes, which?
we are talking, yeah, we building codes, if you wanna go building codes, I mean, we can look right on the main street Webster where, you know, I mean, somebody was building something and it literally fell over in the wind. Something tells me that that was never gonna be up to code anyway, but yet it was getting built right in plain view of everybody, including our city administrators, including our councilman. You know, nobody seemed to bother to ask a question about that. Is that okay? Did he get a permit? Did he do this? Nobody's asking that.
Actually, I did,
Oh,
and
thank you.
so.
But you know what I was
So
talking
that
about.
generalization, and not to be rude.
Well, no, you're
Well,
fine. I understand. You feel free to please correct me anytime. But the codes I'm talking about are the definitions in the codes. If you look up the definitions of vehicle or whatnot, it is anything that can be push, pulled, or otherwise powered under, otherwise powered, which would mean a wagon, a bicycle, a motorcycle, an RV, a Humvee. It's a very vague setting, and it says that they all have to be registered, licensed, and insured in order to be not considered an in-op vehicle. These are some of the things that I'm frustrated about that need to be taken care of. Because otherwise, if you're enforcing the codes as they're written, then, I mean, you're writing people tickets for bicycles. And it needs to be straightened out. I mean, we've made more codes and more codes, but we've never gone back and we've never, fixed the old ones to get rid of the nonsense.
Well, I think the vehicle is pretty clear to me. It's anything that could be mounted on wheels designed to carry cargo is the basics of it. It's
Yeah.
automobile, van, truck, terrain, motorcycle, moped,
Wagon.
recreational vehicle. It doesn't say wagon.
Actually,
Yeah,
it does.
Wagon, an actual wagon, a farm machinery, a boat, trailer, airplane. Those are all vehicle related.
Uh-huh. And bicycles are also directly written in there.
It is, but that's just the definition of vehicle.
Exactly. But it depends on who you have deciding what the definition should be, or what I'm saying is that the codes are left up to too much interpretation.
Have we had somebody try to enforce something on a bicycle that you're talking about, or are you talking hypothetically?
The bicycles, hypothetically, leaves in the street are an actual thing that I got cited for. It was a windy day and they blew up under my truck. And I had just gotten done getting rid of the rest of the leaves in my yard. And there was somebody that doesn't like me that decided to take advantage of the situation and not tell the truth. And the city cited me because I wouldn't clean them up at 8 o'clock at night in the middle of November. And that happened 3 years ago. Now, other than that, there's been a lot of very petty things that I've been cited for. And if you'd like, I can bring a list to the next meeting. I have every bit of the paperwork. And it's just, the problem I see with selective enforcement is it's basically, it's the whim of a tyrant. Who the tyrant is, I don't know. I'm not going to say that anybody up here is the tyrant, but somebody is not enforcing the codes unilaterally.
I think you mean bilaterally.
Bilaterally.
Your
Thank
concern
you.
is that they are being unilaterally enforced. So
If that was the case, then why do we have wagon wheels used as art, which are specifically designated as automotive parts? And it specifically says wagon wheels. Yet, many people in town have them, and quite frankly, I don't want to get rid of them. But I'm trying to bring the attention to you guys so that you understand that the way the codes are right now, it's selective enforcement. We need to actually spend some time on our codes and get them fixed. And that's what I've been pushing so much for the last 3 years, at least. And I've gone unheard, unheeded. So, yes, I am frustrated about the situation. And yes, there's about 12 people right now that the city has definitely got them under a microscope. You know, for anything from like grass that's over, like weeds around, like where I got a ticket or I got a notification because my weed eater broke and I couldn't weed eat around my garden. So, yeah. But, you know, the guy right across the street, man, he got weeds growing everywhere. They didn't do a thing. They didn't bother to write him anything or notify him of anything. It's as though the codes enforcement people go directly to what they're looking for or what they've been told to look for. And everything along the way is like they got blinders on. And I'm not saying anything negative about any of our city people. I think we just need to pay more attention. And I think we really need to look at the codes and make them clear, straight, and clean them up so that you don't have the citizens being frustrated, feeling like they're being picked on or feeling like they're being singled out.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Mr. Boswell?
No, that's all, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What would be useful, like Ms. Hughes said, if you have specific examples, either in the code sections or you said there's 12 individuals,
Yes.
you know, if you're going to point those out or.
I haven't asked permission to point those people out.
Provide specifics.
I can provide specifics. I've got a list of 28 properties that I had given to Mr. Wimpy a couple years ago that all had wagon wheels on them, and they did nothing about them. And it was, you know, and the reason it's frustrating to me is not because I want to call everybody out and make everybody else miserable, because misery loves company. It's because I'm trying to prove the point that this is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous to keep these codes. If we're going to update our codes, we need to clean them up as well, so that you don't have a neighbor that gets vicious and vindictive and decides to go and complain about your wagon wheels, and they can point it right out. And guess what? Now our codes enforcement officer has nothing else he can do. He has to go issue it, or he has to go deal with it. It takes if our codes are cleaned up, it's going to take away a lot of the fire from neighbor disputes. And I know I'm not the only one with a neighbor dispute. But it seems as though the way the codes are right now, it's very much set up to enable a neighbor to harass another neighbor through complaining and complaining and complaining about code this or that or the other. You know, and it's one thing if you've got a safety hazard. It's one thing, you know, I mean, if your weeds are too tall or whatever, that's great. And, you know, complain. If it really bothers you, if it's a danger, complain. But, you know, I would like to make sure that we, as a city, grow enough to not use the city in vindictive and vicious behavior. And that's all I really want to say.
One thing I'll add is you said you're on the verge of possibly getting a code violation for not having a weed eater. Feel free. If
Oh,
you need
no. That was like 2 years ago.
I was going to say,
Actually, right now,
Weed eater, feel free to give me a call.
right now, I have an ultralight race trailer that doesn't have a title. I found a VIN number on it finally, but I've been asked to move it because it doesn't have a license plate on it. And because it has double axles, even though they're aluminum axles and they don't hold a lot of weight, it's a race trailer. It holds a rear engine dragster, which is the only reason it has double axles. But it apparently, you know, a double axle trailer needs to have a license plate on it. So I've got to figure out a way to get a title for it so that I can get it registered. And the city has asked me to move it. They've been gracious with their time. I appreciate it. I've had issues with my truck, meaning the starter, like I've got a start. I picked up a starter tonight. Henceforth, I'm so dirty. But, you know, and I communicated with some of the city leaders that I'm going to, you know, that I'm putting the starter in tonight, and I'm going to try to work on getting that trailer moved as soon as possible. I'm just hoping that the city doesn't use that or take that opportunity to cite me in the meantime as I've been communicating with them. You know, I would hope that the city would understand that, you know, first we had a case of COVID at our house and we were on quarantine, and then went out to start my truck to go to work. First day I was out, and my starter smoked, literally like smoked. And so I went to the salvage yard, get another starter, and it was the wrong one, so I had to go back. Brought one back today to put in the truck. Now we got bad weather coming tomorrow, and that's going to make an issue too. So you know, it's very difficult to do things on the timeline that the city has expected sometimes, and a little leniency, understanding, and of course, I feel as long as communication from the person that is having issues always helps. So, you know, that's where I'm at. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
The issue with your title, you may need to undertake a quiet title action. I just checked Kansas Judicial Council's website. They don't have forms there, but you're a Johnson County resident, which makes you eligible to receive services from the law library at the Johnson County Courthouse. There's probably information there that would help you to undertake that quiet title action.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm aware of that, and I also am aware it just takes time to get all that done. So I am working on trying to get those taken care of, or moving the trailer to a different location so that I am not in considered violation.
Okay. Just trying to offer a little bit of insight.
I appreciate it.
Also, for the council's, you can go ahead and sit down. Mr.
Okay, thank you.
The council's information last month, I had a discussion with Mr. Burton and Mr. Hendershot in regard to codes, ensuring that we're doing standard patrol routes, ensuring that all properties in the city are being covered, so that if there were a concern or a concern later gets raised about selective enforcement, we're at least certain that we are going property to property, so that we're not a strictly complaint-driven codes department. So that conversation was in December, and I know that there are some other changes coming in code enforcement this year, so we'll look forward to get some of that information from Mr. Burton and Mr. Hendershot. The floor remains open. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and close that portion of the program, and we'll move on to the first of our 4 presentations. The first one, very exciting, Chief Henson.
So thank you for allowing me to recognize and celebrate an individual who volunteered and was chosen to formally lead others in the Spring Hill Police Department. As I've stated before, selecting leaders is not something that I or anyone should take lightly. Everything rises and falls on leadership, and so when selecting a leader, it is important to find someone who has character, who demonstrates consistency, competency, and the right attitude to lead others. Being promoted to a position where you lead others is a significant step in a career. It shows a willingness to challenge oneself and become more involved in the success of the department. This individual understands and represents our core values of respect, which is responsibility, excellence, service, professionalism, example, compassion, and teamwork. And we are glad we can share this accomplishment with their family, who some are online, some are here, and members of the governing body and citizens of Spring Hill. And with that, I'd ask John and your cousin Tom Foxworthy to come up. And we'll have you guys stand right here for now. So this is what will embarrass you just a little bit, telling a little bio. John was born and raised in St. Joe, Missouri, where he attended Benton High School. He later earned college credits at Missouri Western State. After high school, John joined the Missouri Air National Guard and served 8 years. During his service, he earned the rank of Staff Sergeant and supervised military security police. In his final year of military service, he joined the Paola Police Department, and during 10 years with Paola PD, he rose to the rank of sergeant, supervising patrol and crash investigation team. He also earned the Kansas Gold Medal Award and Tactical Officer of the Year from the Kansas City Metro Tactical Officer Association in 1999. He's been doing this for a little while. John spent another 9 years with the Miami County Sheriff's Department, serving as patrol and detective sergeant. He also supervised the K-9 team, firearms range, training, crash team, and their tactical response team. He joined Spring Hill in 2015. As a Spring Hill officer, John continued his involvement with training and as a field training officer and an instructor for Taser, Alice, and Radar. He has been a leader among the officers and takes pride in his work from start to finish. John has a total of 24 years of experience, and much is expected of you. But I have no doubt you will rise to the occasion, and we will see great things from you as we move the department forward to serve our community to the best of our ability. And with that, Tom, if you will do the honors, make sure you don't stick yourself there. Congratulations. You guys didn't want to get in the picture?
I have a face made for radio.
Thank you.
Some people probably thought we had a motion to adjourn. Yeah.
Sergeant and all of the officers present, congratulations. Today, more than ever, we need people dedicated to the service of others, and law enforcement is one of the most noble callings. And given the attack on law enforcement and public servants as a whole, I think I can speak for everybody up here when we say how proud we are to have you in Spring Hill and how lucky we are to have you here. As someone who used to wear that uniform, and I'm not going to pretend to speak for Mr. Owen, but I'm going to bet he feels the same way that I do, that there are times we wish we could put our selective uniforms back on and serve with you. We can't do that, but what we can do is support you. So congratulations and thank you very much. All right, this takes us to the second of our presentations, project report and update. Dan Miller with Lamp Randerson, our city engineer. Is Dan online? Okay. Mr. Miller.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Apologize for having to make this presentation remotely. I planned to be there tonight, but had a potential exposure to COVID, so I thought you probably would not want me. Here for a project update on some of the major projects that are underway in the city of Ridgeview, at the request of City Administrator Hendershot to let you guys know what's going on. Next slide, Antoine. First project we'll talk about briefly, which you've heard about for too long, frankly, is the 199th and Ridgeview Roundabout project. That is a 2019 CARS project that, due to various issues, has had a little problem getting out of the gate to construction. It's estimated about 1.56 million project cost, $565,000 of which will be paid for by cars. It, as a reminder, is a modern single-lane roundabout at the intersection of 199th and Ridgeview. The high school, of course, is directly north of there. It is expandable in the future based on traffic patterns and growth in traffic in this area, which we do anticipate. Finally, right-of-way and easement acquisition is complete. Those documents will be, I think, brought before the city for acceptance probably at the next council meeting. We are putting the final touches on the plans and the project manual with a scheduled bid date of March 10th. So it'll be going out to bid here very quickly in early February. We expect to bring contract approval, final contract on the April 8th council agenda. Would then propose, hopefully we'll have construction started around May 1st, maybe even a little bit sooner. And we will complete the construction in the fall, September, October timeframe. This is about the same schedule that we really had planned for last year, but all of the issues that we've been dealing with in construction have set that back by about a year. So the bulk of the roundabout will be constructed during the summer while school is out. If there are no questions about that, I will move to the next project. Second project under construction is down at the wastewater treatment plant. The aeration and clarifier updates at Basin 1 and 2. You may recall we did an emergency repair here early in 2020 and then immediately advanced what was going to be a 2021 project to 2020 to replace the major components in the clarifiers that were below the water line that had deteriorated over the couple decades or so that plant's been operating. It is under construction by Mega KC, is the contractor. Currently, the manufacturer is fabricating the components. We do expect those components to be delivered in April or so. So we can provide for substantial completion May 31st and final completion of that contract on June 30th. So those basins will have all new equipment. The old equipment was galvanized steel. The new equipment will be stainless, so it should have an enhanced service life to it. If there are any questions, I would take them on that. Otherwise, I will go to the next project. Currently under construction, we have our 2020 CDBG sanitary sewer rehabilitation project. That is about a $210,000 construction project right now. $154,000 of which will be reimbursed by CDBG. The project is under the city's budget. Currently, we do have some additions that we're looking at that need to be done that we were a little concerned about making the budget originally. Once we got a good bid, we may be coming back for an additional, little bit of additional work that's necessary. The project consists of point repairs on the sanitary sewer lines in the CDBG eligible area. We are doing some pipe bursting, which is where we, as opposed to digging a new pipe in place, they burst a pipe through the old pipe, which does not require digging a trench. And then the biggest part of the project is the placement of CIPP or cured in place pipe to extend the service life and prevent root intrusion into the old clay pipes that are currently out there. It is under construction, as I mentioned. The contractor is Utility Solutions. Point repairs are pretty close to being done, I believe, and pipe bursting is underway at this time. The completion date is April 1st. The contractor thinks he can beat that date. Weather permitting, he should be going into the CIPP portion of the project here pretty soon. So we don't see any problems in completing that project. If there are any questions, I would take them. Otherwise, I'll go to the next project.
Mr. Miller, if you pardon the interruption, Mr. Hendershot, we're a little heavy on acronyms here, and for people watching or people who may not be familiar, it might be helpful if maybe Ms. Schupert would put together a glossary of terms, and as these presentations are placed online, have that available. CDBG, for example, is Community Development Block Grants. Those are housing and urban development funds administered by the county. So for people watching, The reason why it's limited to certain areas is that the distribution of those funds are limited to economically challenged areas. We work with the county, and we've been very fortunate. Mr. Miller, what year is this that we've received these funds?
For 2020 funds.
No, I'm sorry. How many years in a total have we received this?
Well, I don't have a lot of history with the city, but you're, depending on how much you
10,
ask for,
15?
you can get them either every year or every other year.
Yeah, I know there were a couple of years where we took funding for handicapped accessible bathrooms and facilities here. Is that right, Mr. Hendershot?
Yes, sir.
And then otherwise, at least for the last probably 15 years, we have been fortunate enough to receive these funds for the sewer relining. So that's really good information. I'd like to make sure that interested members of the public can go online and maybe not have to track down what each one of these acronyms means.
We can do that for this presentation and others, yes.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Miller.
And yeah, it's been at least 15 years.
Okay.
Yeah, this program has been underway by Johnson County for quite some time, and it is limited to those blocks that are eligible for block grant funding, those areas of the city. I apologize for the acronyms. I'm an engineer, so it's hard not to.
Well, I think everybody up here probably knows, but again, if you're interested in these things, it's nice to not have to hunt down what each of the acronyms means.
And Johnson County has, in addition to your comments, Mayor, they're very good to work with on these projects. They make it much more simple and seamless than a lot of other entities, the state, for example, and other entities that also administer community development block grant funds. You can get them from KDOT or through the state of Kansas, but Johnson County is sub-allocated to us, and they make it a very painless procedure.
I would agree.
Next project. So we're working on a subdivision, which is the Dayton Creek 6 Benefit District project at 191st and Lone Elm Road. Several of the areas of Dayton Creek have been constructed with benefit districts. This is a little bit different in that the project was administered by the city, or is being administered by the city. About $2.4 million in construction, constructing a typical subdivision: streets, sanitary sewers, storm sewers, mass grading. This is an interesting project because we are coordinating and have been coordinating with the new Spring Hill School District Elementary School, which is under construction by J.E. Dunn and is right in the middle of the subdivision construction. So a little bit challenging to do all of that at the same time in basically the same place, but R.D. Johnson, our contractor, has done an excellent job. It is mostly complete. There's some minor work to be done in the subdivision proper, and then we're going to be out on Lone Elm, north of 191st, doing some paving work in the spring. So we anticipate final completion on this project May 1st or thereabouts. That's the current completion date with the contractor. And they really worked to get that snuck in before winter. Weather was definitely closing in on us, although fortunately it's not been that bad a winter so far, knock on wood. And they were able to work a little bit later than anybody really anticipated on things like paving in particular. Next project. The project that I'm excited about is the Webster Street Rehabilitation Project. It's a 2021 Johnson County CARS project, and that's county assisted road system funding, where the county provides matching funds up to a limit for projects on CARS eligible routes, which are generally major streets like Webster. Currently, the project cost is estimated at a little less than $800,000, $364,000 of which would be paid for by CARS at that rate. What we intend to do, and you've seen presentations on this previously, is to rehabilitate the existing concrete roadway by repairing the longitudinal cracks that you can see there, and doing some panel replacement where it's beyond just the cracking. Then we will replace an ultra-thin bonded asphalt surface, do what we call a macro texturing or a very light milling, about a ½ inch. And the bonded asphalt surface is essentially a thin overlay, asphalt concrete overlay, you might call it, although it has engineering differences. Along with this, we will be upgrading the ADA, the sidewalk ramps along Webster to be ADA compliant, notably to add detectable warnings to those ramps, and some minor sidewalk work where we have kickers or other issues with ADA compliance. CARS agreement is complete with the county. It's under design. We've scheduled the survey of the ramps. We do have to have a little bit of survey work on those to design new ramps, make sure they're compliant, and give the contractor guidance on how to construct those. We are working on the plans and project manual. Currently, we anticipate bidding that in April, which means the notice to bid would go out probably late February or right around March, about a month from now, maybe 5 weeks. We would get contract approval in May and perform the construction during the summer between June and September. The UBAS material, like other paving, likes to go down in the summer, so we definitely want to get it done by August or September. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Otherwise, we will move on. Last item, I think it's the last item I wanted to talk about, was street maintenance. We've been, we have one more. So we do have a budget for street maintenance in 2021 of around $250,000. It's possible that we would have, since we haven't done our full street maintenance last year, some available funds from previous years. Our planning and execution, I would say, of the street maintenance program has been dramatically affected by staffing challenges. As you know, currently we are without a director of public works and a street superintendent, and both of those folks would normally be heavily involved in this effort. I've been challenged, and this is something I'm very familiar with, and I am going to go ahead and prepare a maintenance program for discussion with staff, and then bring it to council. And then we will prepare a plan and goals for 2021 in accordance with that street maintenance program. So we're going to get to work on that pretty quick here and get that going, and we will be reporting back on street maintenance directly. Next slide. One of the items that's not city capital improvements, but is obviously very important to the city of Spring Hill, are your subdivisions. And we have seen, since I have been the city engineer for you, and I know before that, John Brand, a pretty significant amount of subdivision construction for a city the size of Spring Hill. It's very busy. In the last few months, we've completed Brookwood Farms 5th plat, Cummins 1st plat, which is commercial up north, off Brickyard Business Park, also a commercial, small commercial extension up north. Projects which are substantially complete but haven't had their final acceptance letters are Boulder Springs 3. That includes a double chip seal on Woodland Road from 199th to 191st. Foxwood Ranch 2nd plat phase 1, Cummins 2nd plat, and Summerhill Acres 2. They'll all be getting formally closed here very soon. There's some minor things going on there. Currently, we have Woodland Crossing 1st plat under construction. Last time I went by here earlier in the week, they had the manholes, sanitary manholes sitting there in the pipe. I don't know if they've started digging or not. And Woodland Ridge 8. I think Woodland Ridge has been around quite a while, and so this is the first expansion of that subdivision, as I understand it, in quite some time. We have a lot of plan reviews that we've done recently. Some of the more significant ones that I think are probably going to be upcoming is Brookwood Farms 6th plat. We've approved those plans, working on the agreements and things. The Spring Hill School District Middle School number 3, which also has a small row of houses south of it off 193rd Street, called the Estates of Wolf Creek 8th plat. Spring Hill Middle School 3 will have several off-site improvements, turn lanes and those types of things. So there'll be quite a bit of public improvement work there. And then Foxwood Ranch third plat is working through the process as well. So we do see a steady amount of subdivision construction and a fair amount of commercial construction too. We did do a plan review, I did mention here on the proposed quick trip at basically Webster and 199th, I guess, 169 really. So at the rate I've seen quick trip operate, I would think it probably won't be too long before we get a building permit out on that and some public improvement plans. They have some work to do on Webster, and I believe they've also got some work at some point to do out on 169 in terms of some turn bay work. And we have not seen public improvements plans for that, but I expect that to occur quickly. So that's the conclusion of my presentation. I would be happy to entertain any questions that you may have for me.
Any questions for Mr. Miller? Right, well, Mr. Miller, thank you very much. We appreciate the update. Lots of good work happening. Next item is the 2020 year-end report. Mr. Hendershot, you are next.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to cover a lot of information this evening, so I ask for your patience as I go through several items here. Over the course of the next 2 to 3 meetings, you will be receiving year-end reports from the various department heads. So I'm not going to focus on their work, as that is their work. However, in this report, what you'll hear this evening is a recap of 2020 council actions, programs and policies reports, status of senior leadership, status of vacant positions, the financial condition of the city, the overall city operations, and a 2021 preview. Regarding 2020 major council actions and activities, the year started off with the oath of office for Mrs. Hughes, Mr. Grave, and Mr. Owen, followed by the council electing Councilman Owen as that council president. There was an acceptance of bids from Allo Communications for broadband throughout the city, provided funding for live streaming of meetings and video arraignments for municipal court, purchased vehicles for the police department, approved funding for the design of Veterans Park, approved agreement for CDBG funding for sanitary sewer rehab work, approved a declaration of state of local disaster due to COVID-19. Due to the coronavirus, at that time, several meetings were held in a virtual format. Approved proposal and contract for wastewater treatment plant emergency repairs. Received a final report on the bike walk KC. Approved the KDHE waste tire grant for mulch at various playgrounds. Renewed the contract for the land company for land acquisition services. And a decision was reached to not open the aquatic facility for the previous year. Recognized outgoing Public Works Director Jim Boyer, who retired. There was an approval of site plan and plats for the Spring Hill Middle School. Implemented monthly reports related to projected revenue and spending due to the projected impacts of COVID-19. We held a grand opening of the Veterans Park. Approved the first ever 2-year budget for 2021 and 2022. That it was following a series of 10 meetings where the budget was discussed and the public input was requested. Adopted the 2021-2025 Capital Improvement Program. Approved the bid and contract for wastewater treatment plant aeration and clarification replacement that Mr. Miller just identified. We reviewed the Spring Hill Community and Business Survey with the ETC Institute, reviewed and approved the park's master plan, entered into an agreement with Johnson and Miami counties for coronavirus relief funding, adopted an ordinance for the operation of golf carts in certain city streets, entered into an agreement for the conceptual design of a proposed justice center, adopted a code of ethics, repealed the annual dog and cat tax for licensing, renamed the park at Woodland Ridge to Legacy Park, approved several purchases of equipment and systems with CARES funding benefiting residents and staff for a safer work environment and opportunities for residents, and then approved the 2021 contract for fire services with Johnson County Fire District 2. So as you can see, these are just the highlights of major items accomplished by the council over the past year. Regarding programs and policies in 2020, there was an implementation of a right-of-way permit program. The ethics policy was approved. The donation policy was approved. Work on the Dig Once policy continues. Developing a conduit plan and budget is requested. Developing a work order and complaint tracking system for all departments. We're nearing completion of the staff review of the personnel handbook. We're also nearing completion of the social media policy. We'll soon reconvene meetings regarding the development of the South Sewer Benefit District. We will also soon begin posting of all Kansas Open Records requests on our website. We've expanded the city video conference capabilities. This solution allows for building-to-building calls as well as webinars to reduce the amount of in-person training and meetings. We implemented a two-factor authentication deployment for employees' external access to internal resources, providing for that extra layer of security. There was deployment of the video arraignment for court. The use of this video conferencing for arraignments, bail hearings, and other preliminary hearings greatly reduces crowding in the courtrooms, reduces the cost of security personnel escorting prisoners, permits the use of security forces in other needed areas, and speeds up the case proceedings. We implemented live streaming of council and board meetings, provided assistance and promotional activities for the 2020 census, expanded the information provided on the city website, and maintained a positive and informative presence on social media. Regarding staffing, for regular full-time positions, we have current vacancies for police officers, public works director, street superintendent, a maintenance worker in streets, a maintenance worker in utilities, accounting supervisor, and with the recent announcement of the retirement of Trent Wimpy as code enforcement officers as of the end of this month, we will have a vacancy in that position as well. We also have openings for seasonal aquatic facility, such as the assistant pool manager, deck attendant, front desk concessions, lifeguards, and a swimming instructor. The status of the current leadership, senior leadership. Senior leadership consists of myself as city administrator, the assistant city administrator, the director of community services and city clerk, the police chief, director of community development, and the director of public works. With the exception of the vacancy in public works, all of these positions are filled with professional, highly qualified, and competent individuals with a total experience approaching 140 years in municipal government. Weekly meetings are held with the senior leadership team, along with support from IT, public affairs specialist, HR manager, city attorney, and the deputy city clerk. Regarding the financial condition of the city, Ms. Landis, during her reports and coming meetings, will give much more detail, but the financial condition of the city is stable. This, which can be confirmed by the most recent reaffirmed bond rating of AA- as issued by Standard & Poor's. City Council and staff took steps in early 2020 to prepare for possible economic downturns due to the global pandemic, and those responsible precautions ensured that the city was able to end the year in a positive cash position overall. The 2020 budget ended in a positive position where overall most funds realized more revenue than was projected and less expenditures than were budgeted. The overall impact will allow most budgeted funds to realize an increased fund balance rolling into the 2021 budget year. Regarding overall city operations, 9 months of the past year have been affected by COVID-19. Methods of conducting business were addressed and altered while maintaining high customer service and expected work productivity in all departments. City staff must be commended for their responsible and professional reaction to the changes brought about by COVID-19. Due in no small part to these responsible actions by all city employees, the workplace impact of COVID-19 has been minimal. I cannot stress enough how proud I am of all city staff for their professionalism and productivity in 2020 despite the challenges we all face day to day. We continue to monitor the pandemic and how we as a city can continue to navigate these waters in a safe and responsible manner. The impact on staffing. COVID-19, resulted in a hiring freeze for some positions. City has continued to grow during this pandemic and growing in record numbers. 181 new single-family dwellings, along with the expansion of several existing subdivisions, accompanied by new subdivisions being approved and under construction. This growth results in additional equipment needs, streets, sewers, water customers, need for additional police officers, financial staff, administrative assistant staff, inspectors, IT, and public works. In short, the growth we're experiencing is great, but we must remember it affects all departments. The growth has put a strain on all city departments to expect services to continue at the expected and necessary levels of productivity to meet the expectations of our residents without staff increases in all. To do that without staff increases in all departments is, in my opinion, somewhat unrealistic. Revenue projections were developed through the year based on potential impact of COVID-19. These revenue projections that identified potential shortfalls in revenue thankfully did not come to fruition. As mentioned earlier, most budgeted funds ended 2020 with positive results. It is critical for the continued operation of city staff and to continue providing city services in all areas that meet the expectations of the residents and the governing body that these positions be reevaluated for consideration of filling all vacant positions. 2021 preview. Excuse me. Expectations for 2021. We will continue our efforts in earnest to bring high-speed broadband connectivity to the entire community. Items that were approved on the 2021 CIP include the paving of a section of 191st from Lone Elm to Thieden Street, replacing of an aging and deteriorating salt and sand structure, design improvements to Hale Street from Webster to Woodland, design improvements for the 223rd and Webster Street Transportation Plan. Continue to work on the rehab project on Lincoln Street in our industrial park. Design and complete construction of the much-needed rehabilitation and paving on Webster Street from 207th to South Street. Consider rehabilitation of the sewer lagoons. Design a wastewater treatment plant flood hazard mitigation projects. Replace the roof at the wastewater treatment plant for the Headworks building. Begin construction on Veterans Park Memorial and Pavilion thanks to generous donations, and to begin in earnest additional donation efforts to honor our veterans. Complete the conceptual design of a proposed Justice Center to allow the governing body to make the decision on going to the voters for approval. Additional projects for 2021 include the following. We will distribute an RFP for banking services. We will review the city purchasing policy for potential updates and amendments. We will complete the review of the tax abatement and incentive policies for consideration by the governing body. We will complete a fixed asset module, complete a street maintenance plan, complete a reopening plan for the aquatic facility, review and finalize the 2022 budget. We will roll out a new employee evaluation system, as well as completing a wage and salary comparison. We will distribute an RFP for assistance with health insurance and benefits for city staff. We will complete harassment and discrimination training as required, and we will complete Kansas Open Records Act and Kansas Open Meeting Act training with staff and the governing body. As indicated previously, your city staff has been very busy on a wide variety of topics, and it is important to remember that this is all above and beyond the day-to-day business that each employee undertakes. The day-to-day work never stops, but our staff understands the importance of all work identified above as being critical to assuring Spring Hill is a safe, attractive, welcoming community to live, work, and play. In finalizing my report with 2021 preview, I will say, excuse me, I began my career in municipal government in early 1986, and I've seen much come and go over those years. I'm gonna get emotional here, so bear with me.
You're fine. Take your time, Jim.
My 35-year career has been extremely rewarding and fulfilling, and I'm proud of my 13 years plus with the city of Spring Hill. As a final section of this report, I'm announcing my retirement with an effective date of July 2nd, 2021. I'm ready to move on to the next phase of my life with my wife and family. With that, I would take any questions.
First, Jim, congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you.
I think it is a capstone here at Spring Hill on a career well-worked and a retirement well-deserved.
Thank you.
Obviously, we'll celebrate that more formally as we get a little bit closer. I did want to make a comment on two things. One, COMA and CORE training should be also for all of our boards and
Yes, sir.
commissions, not just the governing
Yes,
body.
sir.
And also in regard to the personnel, obviously, we still have some concerns about what the economic outlook is in 21 and beyond. We still don't quite know what the long-term impact of COVID might be. I'm not anxious to go and start filling positions, but obviously if we have needs that can be satisfied by using contractors, that ought to be the first discussion that we have with the governing body. Obviously, if we have law enforcement needs, and we've already got some positions approved for this year, clearly those would need to be filled. Whatever other positions we've already approved in our biennial budget should be filled that have not been frozen.
Yes, sir.
But I would like us to look creatively at some of those other areas that may not put us in a posture of having 12 months of recurring cost if we might be able to utilize the services of a contractor.
And in many of those areas, we're on the way to that.
Okay. All right, anything for Mr. Hendershot? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, next up is our Community Development Year-End Report. Mr. Burton. Madam Clerk, could I get?
Another pen?
Yes, please.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. And I don't know how I drew going after the city administrator, but whatever. As I think all of you are well aware, we're very extremely busy this year in the Community Development Department. We issued 1,014 permits, 181 of those were new single families. 6 of them were duplexes. We had 6 commercial, and the total valuation was about 85 million, with about 46 of that million was new single families. We've also not included in those evaluations, obviously, are structures that we still have to inspect, like schools, buildings, and things of that nature. It was a good year for the water department. We were able to have a developer go into Oakwoods that had set for about 15 years. It's directly behind the Aquatic Center. And we issued 56 city water meters. 54 of them were single families, 2 were commercial. We were very extremely busy all the way around. It was a good year to implement the tablets, and it did save a lot of paperwork and a lot of time, actually. We did go this year without a building official, so we really just had myself, Trent, and Will doing the inspections. A lot of inspections. The total assessed valuation of everything was, our total amount of fees that were collected was $1.8 million, round figure is 1,796,608. And the actual fees that were collected was just a little under $900,000. And the rest of that is still sitting there under our deferment. The deferment program has been working very well. There is outstanding deferment of about 890,000 also. But it's been working very well. It's, as long as houses are selling, the transition just keeps going around, and all the developers and builders do appreciate that. We did extend that into this year, the 21 year. Even the large developers say, you know, hey, it gives us some time, a little bit of cushion there. And overall, we had 943 preliminary platted lots, and we had 226 final platted lots as of right now, passed through the council. There are some others right behind it. We had, in the planned portion of it, we had 869 planned units. The largest portion of that is with the apartment complex that would be there. 69 of those are under construction though, which that's in Boulder Springs. So overall, it was a really good year. The focus on next year, also I need to go into code violations and codes. The code violation department also, Trent also does right-of-way inspections. And with the introduction of the fiber that's being laid this year, he was very busy with those, but still wrote 232 code violations with 406 letters sent out. I know there had been some discussion of selectiveness, but I think that goes to show that it was pretty much overall throughout the entire community. So we are looking at adopting, we're working with the different counties, both Miami and Johnson, on updating the new codes. We're still in the 2006 code, which is a very safe code. But as we're starting to see now that there's not much support for it any longer. You can't even really buy the code books unless you go on eBay or something. So we are looking to do that. You know, if I have time this year, I will. Obviously, the planning department or the planning commission did not get to do their comprehensive plan because we were all nervous that, and we're back in gear on doing that. We're doing some of the preliminary work as the year starts out, and then we'll go back at it and see if we can't accomplish that this year. And then finally, to kind of end it here, the last that I was aware of is our department was able to not utilize around $94,000 of our budget. So I know probably half of that was because we didn't fill a position, but I think that's pretty good for a small budget that we have in comparison to everybody else's. So.
Absolutely. I've had the opportunity, Pat and I have spent a lot of time working together over the course of the past year. Pat, Jim, Melanie and I, and any combination with these businesses coming in, and I just could not be more pleased with the work that we're seeing come out of community development and administration overall. The icing on the cake for December was our ability to announce that Quick Trip is coming into Spring Hill, and that has generated a tremendous amount of enthusiasm in the community. You know, it was through some work that Pat had done that led to the introduction of the waiver of the right-of-way permit fees for fiber. There's just so many good things that have come out of community development. And I don't want to just pick and choose because obviously we had O'Reilly, we had Oak Woods. The number of people in this city, and I look at Jim, who have worked on trying to get somebody into Oak Woods, and we have been so close so many times only to have something happen. I want to make sure everybody understands how important that is when we had infrastructure sitting there for 15 years not being used. this was in, and is in rather, the city's water district. So those meters go directly into our water system development fees. Those residents that come in will be on city water and help to drive some of those costs down for us over time, for those of us who are on city water. In any case, I don't mean to wax enthusiastic.
Also, as a positive in the South Sewer Benefit District.
Yes,
That's
yes, I
correct.
forgot, absolutely, yes.
That was developed before I was even on city council, and there's been no development on that sewer district, so, except for this that I came,
So there are just a lot of really positive things that are coming out of the work that the city staff is doing. And, you know, it just so happens that Pat's area is one of the areas where I think we see the fruits of that labor so much more quickly. You know, in Melanie's area, we're waiting for bond ratings, for example. We're waiting for auditors' reports, and then we see the fruits of those labor as well. So at any rate, Jim and Pat, terrific updates. Congratulations to you both for the accomplishments of your team and the city as a whole. We'll look forward to some additional updates at our next council meeting. I don't believe so. Pat does not care if there are questions. He's on. This takes us to our consent agenda.
Mayor, move to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0-0. This takes us to the first of two formal council action items. Consideration of resolution number 2021-R-01, acceptance of easements and right-of-way for 199th Street and Ridgeview Road Roundabout project. Mr. Jenkins.
Mayor, members of the council, the first item is the project that our city engineer dealt with or covered. It was 199th Street, South Ridgeview Road Roundabout. It's necessary to acquire easements or right-of-way from 4 tract owners. You have the resolution before you. The tract owner amounts were negotiated by John Amrine, our land acquisition agent. And as the city engineer stated, some of this money is coming from the county program. I thought now I lost CARS program. And Mr. Amrine has negotiated this. His recommendation is for approval of resolution number 2021. You said R-21?
Yes, R01.
R01.
2021-R-01.
Mayor, move to approve resolution number 2021-R-01.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
One item, Mr. Jenkins, we reached a resolution with all the members?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. Just wanted to make sure that was clear. Yep.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0-0. I'd be remiss if I didn't stop and thank former County Commissioner Steve Klicka as well as Commission Chairman Eilert. Both of those folks were involved in helping us to get to this point on this project and remaining engaged in that. So I appreciate their help, as I know that city staff does as well. Next item is consideration of resolution 2021-R-02. This is authorization to purchase police in-car radios. Ms. Landis.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the first action, take the second.
Okay, very good.
Okay, so to give you guys a little bit of a background, the Metropolitan Area Regional Radio System, called MARS, is a consortium of 700 megahertz and 800 megahertz trunked radio systems in the MARC region, and MARC is Mid-America Regional Council, that comply with APCO Project 25 standards, and I can't tell you what APCO means. Within a interoperability, basically. It allows all of us, in layman's terms, it allows all the agencies to communicate with each other. And this was a big deal that came out from 9/11, where agencies could not communicate when you had all those things. So it became a very big issue for police departments and fire departments to be able to communicate with each other, and that's where MARC came in. So this interoperability is important and sets the standards for that. This consortium, in which we are a part of, provides authorized radio users with the ability to seamlessly roam and have voice communications through each of our radio systems in the metro area. They provide policy guidance and oversight over the radio system to ensure that the high-quality, reliable system is available in the metro area and meets the needs of emergency response agencies and is financed equitably. MARS is requiring, unfortunately, that all police radios are updated to models that can operate on an encrypted system by the end of 2021. Now, our portable radios, the ones that we carry on our persons, is already met that standard, but our in-car radios do not. Portable radios were purchased in 2019, and they are, like I said, they already meet our standards for 2021. By purchasing the in-car radios, it'll bring us into compliance and allow us to operate on the regional radio system. If we don't, we will not be able to operate. We have a total of 7 in-car radios, and we have 8 marked units. As some of you may have seen, we have an F-150 that is out there, and right now it does not have an in-car radio. We don't have a radio for it. We are also replacing 859, which is one that was approved for replacement last year. It goes up for upfitting at the end of the month, and we will not put the old radio in that, unless we had to. So we received 3 quotes for in-car radios. They range anywhere from $28,456 to $45,381, and those exclude installation and programming costs. Each radio has to be programmed. We have a radio mapping system that's quite extensive, and so each radio has to be touched and programmed. There are very few options for programming and installation, as well as vendors who are authorized to sell police in-car radios. And we estimate the installation and program cost to be approximately $3,400. Motorola Solutions provided the lowest bid of $28,456.80. That is the state bid, and Johnson County is the same bid that Miami County was able to get, and they have extended that to us as well. Anyway, I think I already made this point that it's important to note in order to communicate with our dispatch center, we will need these radios. So I'm going to turn it over to Melanie, who's going to talk about the finance aspect of it.
Thank you, Chief.
I should say Ms. Landis. I'm sorry, that was informal.
Still knew who you were talking about.
All right, so I appreciate the ability to kind of do the tag team approach here, and normally we would kind of just be able to easily move through this. However, for these in-car radios, they were approved under the 2021 budget as a lease purchase. At least that's how we anticipated financing them. Towards the end of the year, we had the CARES monies that we've been working through all year long and the projects that we did. And under one of the programs, which was administered by Johnson County, they decided more towards the end of December, to go ahead and reimburse all of the cities that had remaining dollars under the cap that they were allowed for payroll expenditures for their law enforcement. And in doing so, that allowed us to have those funds on hand to continue moving forward with the projects that were already approved. But as you probably read in the report that was sent out to you on December 31st, we do have, because those funds for personnel expenses were reimbursed to us, we do have that amount of money. It's approximately $50,000, maybe just a little bit over. The reason that we thought it was appropriate to ask you if you would consider using some of those dollars for the purchase of these in-car radios is because we had originally requested approval of the purchase of those in-car radios under the CARES Act funding, and were denied. It just didn't meet the criteria in the original set of requirements for CARES funding. Additionally, the police department spent time and effort in preparing a grant request last year. Unfortunately, we're denied, but also we have expanded our look at ways to be able to fund those in-car radios. So what we have done this evening is prepared for you 2 options, and I apologize that you're kind of being put on the spot having to make a decision, but what we did is provide the resolution for the lease purchase, which we absolutely can go ahead and move ahead with if you'd like, or if you would like to use some of those funds that are remaining from the eligible CARES Act dollars from the end of 2020 to purchase these outright with cash instead. in order to kind of help with your understanding of where we sit on just lease purchases overall, there was a report provided in the packet, just a summary of lease purchases, outstanding debt on existing lease purchases that we currently have. And I guess with that, I'd be available for any questions. And again, I apologize that we're leaving you with two different options here, but we thought it was a great opportunity.
Talked about for a while is being able to get away from some of these lease purchases, eliminate interest costs. To me, it makes sense to use those funds, or at least a portion of them. So I'll just open it up for discussion.
I'd like to see us get away from the lease purchase too. And this CARES money is tied directly to the police service, correct?
It's not. The CARES Act, or the CARES reimbursement itself, that's all taken care of. And what it did was, outside of the request for specific purchases, they, in addition to, granted the reimbursement of law enforcement personnel expenses, only salaries and overtime, for the period of March 1 through December 31 for your law enforcement, and only up to the cap that each city had. So for us, we had been approved for everything up to, and it left us with about 50,000 remaining. So those were true just reimbursement for payroll expenditure dollars that right now they just effectively will roll over to our beginning fund balance for 2021 and are not necessarily earmarked for anything in the 21 budget. So they are.
I would be very happy to do a CARS, our CARES Act money instead of lease purchase.
Well, and just to clarify, it's not actually CARES Act money.
Yes, thank you. I want to make sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Reverse,
I don't want anybody to think we're unlawfully using those funds.
Yes, no.
Yes.
Because those were applied, we now have
Money.
dollars available.
Correct.
Because it came out of the police budget, I think it's appropriate for these funds to remain for law enforcement expenditures. As for any excess, do we have other things coming up that we might be able to purchase with cash? I would just encourage you to look at that and see how we might be able to apply those excess funds.
Yes, originally we planned to bring all of that to you at the top of the budget discussion for just revising or reviewing 21 and approving 22. But because this came up early and they really do need to move ahead with the purchase one way or the other early in the year so they can be in compliance timely, we thought it was appropriate to bring it, at least this portion, to you now. But we certainly will bring the rest of it back as some options as to how we can apply those to other purchases.
It's very rare that we get cash in hand that we're not holding to roll over to the next year. If I can make a suggestion that's actually not on this page, and it's totally up to you if you even want to think about this, but using the cash to pay down higher interest debt that we have and doing the short-term lease purchase option now for this amount, because the interest rates are so rock bottom low now, I think it's better that we use extra cash on hand to pay high interest debt. And that way we're saving that interest money that we would have paid for the same amount of debt. Is that possible?
I would need to reach out to our bond counsel and financial advisor because every one of our issues that we have a time frame in which you can actually pay down against that debt. So the likelihood is that, and we did that just, if you remember last year, we refinanced. And so a lot of those times that's when you can pay down against those and refinance for something a little less. The likelihood is that we would basically roll those into a reserve so that we can pay towards the next set of debt that is eligible for, to be advance refunded, when it comes due. I don't know off the top of my head.
Penalties, you think, on most of our debt then? Like, we couldn't apply it towards high interest because it's prepayment type penalties?
I would need to ask.
Yeah, I don't
how
think
that
prepayment penalties. I think your concern is more that we put money aside and we're not going to realize necessarily the benefit we think we might. Let me ask you this. How much can we go through with this before we actually have to worry about the finance? Can we place the order? Does it have to be paid for when we place it? Can we get the process going and then come back and make a final decision here?
That's a great question. So what I would say is that you would need to approve the resolution. And that gives them the opportunity to go ahead and make the purchase should we need to come back and reimburse ourselves with that lease purchase program later. And if you do that, then it does put us in a position where we can later decide exactly how we want to spend those funds. And we can go back and do some more research, and we would not be in any worse position.
Yeah, why don't we do that? I'd like to explore Councilmember Hughes's idea and see if there's an opportunity to save money. And
Sure.
obviously, we need to be making informed decisions. So if we approve it with the lease purchase option, we're not committed to that course of action. It gives the police department the opportunity to move forward. And then you'll come back at the next meeting and tell us what options are available in line with Councilmember Hughes's idea, correct?
Either at the next meeting or as we start to get into the discussions with the budget, and so that you can prioritize overall where you'd like to see multiple sets of funds going to.
I'd at least like to have her question answered at the next meeting.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we can do that. We
Okay,
can do that.
let's
Sure.
do that.
Okay.
Does that sound agreeable to everyone?
I'm just looking forward from my perspective is getting us away from the lease purchase process. That's
Absolutely.
I get that.
This won't commit us to it,
Okay.
but it allows us to order, and I'd like to see if there's an opportunity to. pay
And I understand what
higher
she's
interest
saying, it
debt.
could be saving some money down the road.
Yeah.
I just,
But, you know, if we have to refinance an issue in order to do that, then the cost benefit may not be there, so.
What I haven't heard is that we have encumbered money in the police department, from what I understand, from last year that we haven't been realized.
No.
What was that again?
This is the CARES allowed.
I know that, so we didn't spend money otherwise, correct?
It was a reimbursement for money that was already spent in 2020.
Correct.
So but we didn't spend money last year, so it's an encumbrance, right?
It's not. It's just money that ended up being reimbursed back to the general fund as a miscellaneous revenue, if you will. And because it wasn't something we spent, it just rolls over as our beginning fund balance in addition to what we estimated we would.
So it's not like where we actually.
Okay,
have
no, I
to
get it.
formally encumber.
Okay, that's why I was asking if we needed to formally encumber it or not.
No.
Okay, that was what I was looking for. And what was the total amount of that? Because it wasn't, is it greater than the 2840, 450, 680?
It is about just over 50,000, we think, is where we're gonna land on all of that.
So
Yes, so
there's
right
other
now,
opportunities that we might need to, or would like, if we have to, use that money that was that additional there.
Yes, there may be other things with the balance of that. I
Around the
wanna know,
22,000.
Are there other purchases this year that we can avoid leasing, or are there other leases that we can pay down or pay off?
correct.
That's kind of what I'm
The
asking
excess.
for.
So,
That's, yeah.
Okay, so based on our discussion, then our recommendation would be to go ahead and approve resolution 2021-R-02 with the eligible expenditures for the in-car radios to not exceed 35,000. We do have to make sure all of those expenditures are lumped in together for that in the resolution. So it's a little bit higher than what we have presented you as numbers.
and that does not commit us to the lease purchase.
It does not. We can come back and make any decision that you wish here.
Okay.
so we'll come back and make a new decision.
Well, let me clarify. Does that include a lease purchase requirement in that resolution?
No, it does
I
not.
didn't think so.
Okay.
It gives us the opportunity
Yeah.
that if we move ahead with the lease purchase, that we can actually reimburse ourselves
I
for
wanted to make sure
the
I understood
expenditure.
that, but
Yes.
that was my understanding.
It allows them to move ahead with the purchase now
Right.
and then be able to actually lease purchase
Then we'll
later,
come back and
should we
decide
choose to do
what
so.
we wanna do then.
Correct.
All right,
Yes.
perfect.
But the motion's not gonna read like that, right? We would have to reword the motion.
No, we're just approving the resolution to allow them to purchase. That's one of the options that's available, so that's the one,
We're not
that's
limiting
the way the
the
resolution will read, is that they'll be allowed to purchase, and then the actual payment of that will come up later.
To be determined, okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Mayor, move to approve resolution number 2021-R-02, not to exceed the estimated cost of $35,000.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Uh-huh.
Chief Henson, do these radios need to communicate or some other type of activity with the body cameras the officers will be wearing?
No, the body cameras and the in-car video cameras, those will be a seamless component. When we go to body cameras, which we have for 2021, those will be connected, but they don't have anything to do with the, radios.
So it's standalone.
Yeah, it's more on the video side, whereas the radios are the talking to the car and to dispatch.
Very good, thank you.
Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 500.
Thank you all.
Thank you both. This takes us to our one and only discussion item on the Kansas Open Records Act policy. Mr. Jenkins, you have
And it should be.
Mayor, members of the city council, this is an item dealing with the Kansas Open Record Act. And as a little bit of a background, I'll direct your attention to a code section in our municipal code. It was adopted back in 2007. It just states that in order to avoid the necessity of using general public funds of the city to subsidize special services and benefits to a record requester, a schedule of fees for providing access to or copying of open public records will be established by a separate resolution adopted by the governing body of the city. Such fees are intended to cover costs of labor, materials, and equipment to the city in providing access to and reproducing public records. Along with that, the code and the state statutes clearly make it clear that you have to be providing reasonable costs. It can't be something that would be a revenue generator, but that's just the legislative background to that. Additionally, the city clerk, Linda Garrity, has noted that it's been 15 years since we revisited this fee schedule. We've done it in part, but not in total, and so she's done a revamping of it, or a survey of it, and checked with multiple other jurisdictions to determine what their rates are in comparison to our consistent approach on this. Now, with respect to the survey, it's her recommendation that the fee schedules that are followed or adopted by the Kansas Attorney General and the state of Kansas be followed in our case. There have been some slight modifications, but they're in three areas. One, and before you, I think on the dais you have that handout, but I'll direct your attention to the inspection fee. There's really no change in the inspection fee, with the exception that because a person can come in and inspect the records, there can be an instance where it's necessary to supervise or observe that person going through those records, so they cannot alter them or remove some of them. This takes time, and she's recommending that we insert a provision where that person who observes the record inspection, that they would be paid for their actual rate of pay for that particular observation. So it could be anyone that she would authorize as a designee to do that. Secondly, with respect to the copying of fees, she's also added some categories for specific records that were not contemplated 15 years ago. There are, including but not limited to, color copies. We didn't have that back then for the benefits of the citizens. Secondly, electronic records, emails, that's done quite frequently now. That was not covered. And then also large formatting of documents, that's done now. So that she's added some areas for that to be considered. And then the third area is staff time. She's suggested adding 4 classified positions, which would consist of a clerical position, an attorney fees, IT personnel, and other persons that would be able to charge actual costs for their time. The summary is something just for your consideration. This is discussion, but we'd request that if it's acceptable that you set it for the next agenda on February 28th. Additionally, another policy change that Ms. Garrity is suggesting is that to avoid duplication of core requests. Sometimes you'll have someone who would make a core request, there would be an answer to it, and then maybe at a later date, the same type of request would come before her and cause a reduction of time or increase in time. And therefore, she's recommending that the core requests and the responses would be put on the website. This is done in other jurisdictions. So it'd reduce her time or the staff time of having to redo, because the persons could then just look on the website and say, hey, this issue has already been addressed.
It wouldn't identify the person making the original request though, right?
I believe.
Yes.
I believe all the jurisdictions do identify the requester.
Yes, it's an open record.
Yeah. Because that too is an open record.
Excuse me, they just wouldn't have the address. We would redact the address. It would just be their name, and it would be a copy of the actual request that comes in. We wouldn't put it on there until it's completed.
That seems to me like it's discouraging open records requests. It seems to me like it's,
But someone could come in and make an open records request for all the people who have filed for open records.
that's fine. Let them do that. I don't think we should do it for them.
What I might recommend is, I'm not interested in this being on the agenda for approval at the next meeting. I'd like to have some additional information. For one, I'd like to know what costs the city's incurring in current open records requests. I would also encourage the council to go look and see, Madam Clerk, if you could send out some examples of cities that are posting open record request information online. I'd like the council to be able to look at that and get a feel for what those communities are doing. Is it reasonable that we would have that information by the next meeting in January, or do we need to move it as a discussion to the first meeting in February?
I request February,
Okay.
if that's okay.
And Ms. Landis, is that reasonable? Because there's going to be some financial information that you may need to provide as well. Okay, so is that agreeable to the council? Put it back as discussion in the first meeting in February?
I'd like to put out just an idea that since citizens of Spring Hill are already paying taxes and paying all the wages, that we seriously look at if a citizen requests a open records, excluding the municipal court and the police department, that they're given to them at no charge.
Okay.
Thing is, it's if, I'm gonna just say, but if it's an excessive cost and time where they would be spent doing on other work otherwise for the citizens of Spring Hill and the greater good, and not on one specific individual, then you are spending a lot of time away that the citizens would have to necessarily be compensated for.
I believe that
So-
we should have a one-time, once a month, small, free request, to where if it's less than 10 pages, it takes less than 5 minutes, and that requester is the first time they've done it in 30 days, they don't have to pay a charge.
Okay. Well, again, I would encourage us to make informed decisions and find out what the expense are, what the time is, kind of look at an average over the course of the last 12 months, and get that information back to the council so everybody can evaluate it. Again, I don't see a need for us to rush this to approval.
That's true,
So-
but when she's doing the information, if we tell her what our ideas are, such as, when you're pulling how much it's costing the city to do these requests, time-wise and things like that, if you could also break it down by how many are repeat requests versus how many, I mean, if we're not spending that much money on one-time small requests, I wanna know that too. I wanna be able to see the difference between the types of requests, the breakdown.
We've also had requests for attorney times too, I mean, that required attorney, so we
Yes,
need to know
and
that
I don't know
information,
how
too.
well we track all of that. I mean, I don't know what she has to go through to pull all that data. I'm just saying, I'd like as many metrics
Right.
in the information as
Right.
possible.
We should be able to pull the attorney fees though.
To my point, I don't see a need, we don't need
We
to rush
still
this.
charge those now.
Yeah, it'll come back on an invoice.
It'll come back. We,
I'm saying we should still have that.
Is there some need that we need to rush this through? So there's no urgency, there's no state statute deadline, some other issue that we're up against. Okay, so we'll take a programmatic approach to it. We'll get some data, that'll come back to the council, the first meeting in February. We'll discuss it again, and then from that meeting, we'll decide what direction the council wants to go then. So, does that work for everybody? Yep. Very good. All right, Mr. Jenkins, thank you very much. All right, this takes us to announcements and reports. I had to miss the December meeting when the animal licensing issue came up. I wanted to thank the council for its approval of that. That was an initiative that came to me through a resident. And one of the things that I want to stress to people in the audience and people watching, that was a resident-driven initiative to eliminate that cost. And it was the resident who said, this is nothing more than a tax on responsible people. And that really resonated with me, and it obviously resonated with each of you. So I wanted to thank you for your approval of that and doing away with that, what I think is really an unnecessary expense to our residents. I would also like to officially welcome Quick Trip to the city of Spring Hill. I understand that they had some plans go through the Planning Commission recently. Mr. Burton, a quick update.
Yes, thank you. The site plan did go through planning commission, and it'll be on the agenda for the next, council meeting. Working with them, and seems like everything's going well with the state as well as the city and Quick Trip altogether.
Very good. Thank you very much. We've got some other exciting things this year. We're continuing to work with the Preeb company on the apartment project. We have some other irons in the fire that hopefully we'll be able to talk about relatively soon. So I'm excited about all of those things to come. Aside from that, I'll move on. Mr. Owen.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Leeton.
Nothing.
Ms. Hughes.
Happy New Year.
You too. Mr. Eckert.
Happy New Year, Jim. Congratulations on announcing your retirement. Thank you. That's kind of a big deal. I'm happy for you.
Thank you very much.
Otherwise, nothing, Mr. Mayor.
I'm going to tell you, when Jim talked to me about this, he had the same stupid smile on his face every other retired person I know has.
Join the club.
I'll be
Lose the watch.
I'll be working till noon on the day of my funeral. So, Mr. Graves. All right. Thank you very much. We'll move on to staff reports. Mr. Hendershot.
No report, sir.
All right. Madam Clerk. Ms. Landis. Of course.
Just a couple of things.
We had money on whether or not you were going to pass.
Hey, I have to start the year off right, okay? Actually, we are like gearing up for what we're hoping will be a reopening of our aquatic center this year. So we have hired as our facility manager, Gabrielle Kemp. She actually was hired as our pool manager last year, but since the pool did not open, and she's been doing reservations for us since then, and she's already been pulling together some information so that we can present to you some options for a possible opening of the aquatic center this season. And to go hand in hand with that, Mr. Hendershot mentioned earlier that we are hiring for all of those seasonal staff positions, and it is not too early to get those applications turned in, and we're hoping to be able to offer some good and better options for those lifeguards or people who want to be lifeguards to train easier than they have been able to in the past. And right now, our facilities for the Civic Center and the Community Center are still closed to the public, mostly for reservations through the end of January 31st, and then we'll go back and reevaluate that. We've been able to manage that pretty well. So just wanted to let you know, and also the public who happen to be watching, that that does still remain in effect, but we will at least have those conversations with people who are asking questions about further down the road, and we're just managing that, watching that closely. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Good. And to set expectations for visitors to the Aquatic Center, we do still have a slide closed. I know that we had undertaken a survey about what amenities residents might like to see out there. Unfortunately, the top vote getter was about $1 million+ amenity. We were thinking more along the lines of, do we repair that slide or replace it with something a little bit more cost effective? Because the Aquatic Center was closed last year, we didn't undertake any capital expenditures out there. So I just want expectations to be set that that slide is still closed for this season, and we'll reevaluate as the season goes on.
Yes.
So,
Thank you.
Chief Henson.
Yes. We, tomorrow, we have 5 applicants that will be taking the written test and PAT, so hopefully snow and ice will not be a factor. If it is, we will have them come back to run their test, but we don't have any slippage. But we also have a new officer, Rudy Rodriguez. He is in the academy. He started last Wednesday. So we're excited about what he will bring, and hoping he will do well in the academy. He's super excited. And then I wanted to tell you a story about what an officer did. And this is something that routinely happens, but I'm going to not give you a lot of details because I don't want to reveal the address or the individual that's involved, but we had an officer respond on a disturbance where a special needs child was really struggling. And the officer went in and spent some time with that individual and gained some trust. The special needs is something that you really need to take some time, what his condition is to get the focus. And so, you know, this officer, after dealing with the situation, you know, went back once a week and just popped in and tried with the special needs child and just gained and built that relationship so that when there isn't an episode, there's already a relationship established. And there has been a significant improvement with that. But these are just, it's a small step, something that the officers here in Spring Hill have an opportunity to do, and they do it, and they enjoy it. And it is a special thing that they're able to do that. It's really neat. And when we talk to officers who are applying here, some of the things that they say as to why their interest is here, or when they go on a ride along, the things that they report back is the fact that the officers take time to stop and talk to the people that are in the neighborhoods that are walking or playing on the driveways, and there is that opportunity to build those relationships. But I just wanted to share that story with you to know, because those things just kind of go unnoticed, and a lot of times you don't realize that the officers do this on a regular basis. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you very much. Mr. Burton.
Thank you. I would like to, speaking of unnoticed, I would like to thank the planning commission. It's a lot of work this year, and I think sometimes they do go unnoticed, you know, that they put in a lot of time to be able to recommend or deny or table or whatever the case may be to the governing body. I'd also like to thank the governing body for all of its patience on some things and support along the way, as well as the PDU. It's with growing pains of what we've had, I think everything's gone really well this year, so thank you.
And that's a good reminder to thank all of our boards and commissions. Every couple of years, we would have a dinner in honor of our volunteers, our community volunteers, and obviously with the pandemic, we've not been able to do, there are a lot of things we haven't been able to do, but we certainly can still thank them. So thank you for that reminder as well, Mr. Burton. Mr. Jenkins.
No report, Mayor.
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn into executive session? And could I see that before it gets read? Let me make sure it covers both things.
If you can read my writing.
Can we do it for a minute?
What does that say?
City administrator reports.
Oh, very good. Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
How many minutes?
5.
5. I tried to get it to a minute, but.
I know.
Well, I was hoping we'd turn around. My hope was we would turn around and immediately adjourn. So.
5 minutes before we.
5-minute recess, so we'll start at
8:55.
8:55. Mayor, move to recess into executive session for 5 minutes. City administrator report under the non-elected personnel exception to the Kansas Open Meetings Act. The following persons are to be in attendance: city administrator and city attorney, starting at 8:55.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. We'll be in recess until 8:55. There's no formal action anticipated. Chief Henson, could I see you for just a moment? That was a productive cough. was limited to the topic stated, no decisions were made, no votes were taken, would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Mr. Hendershot.